Welcome to Cybersecurity Sense, a weekly podcast providing updates and insight into the latest in cybersecurity. Brought to you by LBMC Information Security. Now, here's your host.
Hi, my name's Drew Hendrickson with LBMC Information Security. I'm a shareholder in the group and happy to be here today.
Hi, I'm Mark Burnette with LBMC Information Security. I'm also a shareholder and looking forward to our discussion.
Guys, I am so glad to have you both here with me in person in the studio. We're going to be talking about some really interesting things that the AICPA has announced just recently about a new type of SOC report, and this is called SOC for Cybersecurity. What I really want to make sure we cover is the what this is, the why it matters, how a person, how an individual, how an organization can kind of create a map of what do I need to do? What is their specific plan of action? But before we get to that, I want to just kind of paint a picture of really how this all came to be and kind of give us some history. So, Mark, I know, man, you are on all sorts of committees. You're always out there sharing your perspective. All sorts of things and examples that come to mind of how you are sharing what you know. Now, one of the ways, I don't know all the details, so please help me out here, but you were on this AICPA Cybersecurity Task Force. Is that what they called it?
Yeah, that's what they called it,
I like that
Clark.
name. So that was the group of people who were coming together. He said, hey, we need to take all these pieces and put them together to make something that is much more cohesive and understandable for the average person at a board member or the average individual at an organization, so they can actually understand, are they secure, are they not, what are the steps they need to take, right? Is that what was the purpose of this group to create?
Yeah, when the AICPA recognized the need for something like this, they took the step of saying, hey, let's bring in some subject matter experts to help us think through the right way to put together an examination report. And so they went to some of the largest firms with cybersecurity practices and said, hey, would you be willing to designate a representative from your firm to be a part of this task force? And so we began meeting weekly.
Now, did you get voluntold to do that?
Listen, the answer is when the opportunity was presented to me, I was excited to do it, and it was a lot of fun.
Okay, I figured you would be.
Yeah, no. Listen, it was an option. It was an opportunity. There was no, and I was tickled that they thought of LBMC and they wanted us to be a part of it. And I really enjoyed working with some of the other leaders in our profession, some great folks at some of the large firms, and I think I'm really proud of what we were able to do together, and I'm excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, and you got to meet some great people through that. I know it's been in the works for over 2 years.
Yes, we had started. It was
this is a big industry move.
Interestingly enough, when we first met, we were commissioned for 1 year. They said, we expect you to be able to get this done in a year. And as we began to talk through it, it became very clear quickly that while we could knock something out in a year, it would not necessarily meet the industry's needs. And we went back to the SCPA leadership and said, hey, we can do this, but it would be like ramrodding something in. And so instead, we'd like to have some time where we can have some open feedback periods. And that's exactly what we did. So as we got draft comments together and we got, kind of draft frameworks, we would publish them and have open comment periods for people in the profession and for potential clients and things like that to provide feedback. And they did that. And then based on that, we made updates and we went back and said, oh, well, we've gotten some good insights here. We need to make adjustments to this so that it is more practical. It does meet the needs of the anticipated users and report readers and also the companies who are going to want it.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this today, too. So what I want to do is rewind the clock back to before AICPA even reached out to you. And I want to kind of use that as a place to think about why was it that they created SOC for cybersecurity? Why did the AICPA feel the need to create this whole new SOC report? Let's start there. And then I'm thinking we kind of go back and forth between the two of you guys to kind of look at what we said earlier, why this matters, how this applies to the individual organization, and then we'll kind of take it from there. So let's start off with you, Mark.
Yeah, Clark. Well, it's a great question. I think it'll set the stage for our discussion today. Here's the problem that the AICPA was trying to solve. Business leaders and board members and other senior executives at companies had a lot of questions about whether or not their company was going to get hacked. And
what kind of questions? I mean, they're not technical people. So
that's right.
What kind of question is it? It's just as simple and basic as that.
Well, and that's exactly right. Part of that problem is because they're not technical, they don't know how to ask the right questions about, what should I care about and what how bad is it or how good is it? And so when they would ask their security executive, tell me what's our risk posture and all that, a lot of times what they get is mumbo jumbo and gobbledygook about, we have firewalls and antivirus and, we're tracking the number of help desk calls about password resets and these types of things. And it was difficult for those business executives without a technical background to be able to decipher that and go, okay, well, that all sounds like a responsible actions to take, but I have no earthly idea if that means we're any better, or any worse, and if we're at risk of getting compromised. And conversely, the cybersecurity folks were struggling with the right language to use to help those business executives say, get comfortable, help the business executives get comfortable that they were indeed doing the right things and that they were reducing their risk posture.
So the big why is to create a more fluid barrier that makes language and conversation just understandable.
Yeah, ultimately, the idea is that because CPAs are known as independent and objective and trusted business advisors, the idea is that if an experienced CPA who knows cybersecurity comes in and evaluates an organization's cybersecurity risk management program and gives an independent report, then the business executives may go, we don't understand all the details about cybersecurity, but we brought in a firm that does, and they looked at it, and they're giving us a thumbs up. Therefore, we feel a lot better. And not only that, it's an independent thumbs up, as opposed to looking at the person who's responsible for cybersecurity who's going, yeah, we're doing great, and holding two thumbs up that way.
All right. Well, Drew, how about we kind of transition over to you, and I want to talk a little about the key elements right now that are in a SOC for cybersecurity report. What is it, and why are those there? Yeah,
well, I think there's a lot of things in the past that have always been in place for SOC reporting. It was called SAS 70 before that, and then they moved to SSAE 16, SOC 1, and then they had SOC 2. Now they've dropped the SSAE 16. It's underneath a new attestation standard. The AICPA released 18. It's just called SOC 1 and SOC 2.
So it's getting away from all that mumbo jumbo that Mark was just talking about.
That's right.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, well, so they had SOC 1, SOC 2, and now they've released SOC for cybersecurity. And by the way, that used to be called Service Organization Control, SOC. That's what the acronym was. They've changed that. Now it's System and Organization Controls. So there's a small update there, key component, just the verbiage around it, but you still call it SOC. So now there's SOC for cybersecurity. When they released that, they took the trust services criteria that existed under SOC 2 and they aligned it with COSO. So the trust services criteria are still there, but they've been updated, and those are impacting SOC for cybersecurity as well as SOC 2. So that has an impact on the report as well. Within the actual report, there's going to be three main components. And if you're familiar with SOC reports, whether it be SOC 1 or SOC 2, a lot of those components are going to be the same. You're going to have a description criteria, you're going to have management's assertion, and you're going to have the CPA's opinion. So that's not really new from SOC 1 or SOC 2. What's new is what you're actually putting in each one of those sections. So let's start with the description criteria. So management's description criteria is really the basis for management's cybersecurity risk management program. They're going to put everything in there around how they identify the data that they want to protect, what are their policies and procedures around that. They're not going to give away any of the secret sauce, right? They don't want to give information out that a hacker can read and now break into that company's network. But they're going to put the risk management framework that's in place for that organization. And then you move on to the assertion. That's really management saying, okay, we believe that our risk management program has been effective for a period of time. You can define that period of time however you want it to be. It doesn't have to be that complicated. And say, yep, we feel that those controls have been operating effectively for that entire period of time. And then to break it down very simply, the CPA's opinion is just the independent third party coming in saying, we agree with management's assertion that everything has been in place and operating effectively for this entire reporting period.
I like it. So far, we've been talking about what it is. We've talked a little about why it matters. So now, Mark, I want to ask you, I want to really zoom it in now, just from an organization's perspective. I know you work a lot one-on-one with the actual people who are really moving this organization. So the question is about the how. How can an organization benefit from a SOC for cybersecurity report?
Well, because boards of directors are wanting information on cybersecurity posture, and they're wanting some sort of assurance that they can understand. And there's several ways that an organization benefit. First of all, having one gives the senior business leaders and the board members and other stakeholders at the organization some sort of independent assurance of their cybersecurity posture. We call it the Cybersecurity Risk Management Program is the formal term that's used in the SOC for cybersecurity. Okay, so that's the first thing. But second of all, this report was designed so that it can be handed to what they call report users. And these are people who may be stakeholders outside of the organization who reading it can go, oh, now that I know this, I may feel more comfortable investing in this company if it's a public company. Or I may feel more comfortable entering into a business relationship with this organization because I know that they're going to handle my data properly. Those types of things. So it can facilitate business transactions. Thirdly, right now, because it is such a new standard, an organization that steps out and does it early on is going to have a competitive advantage. If they operate in a field where data privacy and data security is important, being able to stick your hand up and go, we have taken a step and we have pursued and obtained a SOC for cybersecurity certification attestation report, then they're going to have a competitive advantage for a period of time. And it's really going to drive the rest of the organizations in their industry to strongly consider doing that as well.
So I know, Mark, we have talked on site at different conferences here and there, and some of our conversations have been around risk assessment. So when we're talking about the SOC for cybersecurity on one hand, and on the other hand, you hear things like cybersecurity risk assessments. Could you kind of compare the differences? What is the difference, and why does that matter?
Yeah, and that is tricky, Clark, because we're talking about a cybersecurity risk management program in SOC for cybersecurity. So there's that word risk, right? And then most organizations today probably do a risk assessment one way or another. They may have a compliance obligation, HIPAA, PCI, or others. Graham Leach Bliley requires them to be doing some risk assessments. So they may say, hey, we've done a risk assessment. What's the difference? And the answer is, in a SOC for cybersecurity, in those description criteria that Drew was talking about, it goes through a number of different security baselines that an organization should have. One of the ones that it mentions is a risk assessment. So in essence, the risk assessment is a small component of the overall SOC for cybersecurity evaluation and attestation report, examination report.
One piece of the pie.
Yes, it is one piece of the pie. And so, as a matter of fact, the first thing that management's going to do when it makes its assertions in the description, it's going to say, we conduct risk assessments, and here's the way that we do it, and here's the frequency with which we do it. And then the CPA is going to come in and it's going to review the risk assessment process, the reports, and then what's happening with those risk assessments. And, so in other words, when a risk assessment is done, what happens to that information? Who gets to review it, and what decisions are made? Is there a governance process deciding which risks are going to be addressed and which ones will be accepted? That type of thing. So it's kind of taking the risk assessment on and looking at it working its way through the organization. So risk assessment is a small component of a SOC for cybersecurity report.
So, Drew, I want to actually come back to you now. So earlier, I kind of pumped the brakes on it just a little bit, but earlier you started talking about SOC 2 and SOC for cybersecurity reports. So could you explain to our listener what are just some of the key differences? I know there's a lot, but from your vantage point, what are some of the key differences between SOC 2 and SOC for cybersecurity reports?
Sure. So we can start with the scope. SOC for cyber is generally, it is scalable, but generally going to be around an entity's entire cybersecurity risk management program. SOC 2 is really for organizations that are receiving a specific service from that service organization and around the security of the specific controls related to that specific service. So already you have a big difference there. The SOC for cyber is, okay, this is my entire company, my entire risk management program around my cybersecurity risk, whereas SOC 2 is, we're just addressing the security risk for specific controls for a specific service. So that's a big difference right there. Number two are the controls that can be used as the baseline for evaluation. So I mentioned those trust services criteria that are now aligned with COSO. You can use those, and those are a part of SOC 2, and you can use those in your SOC for cybersecurity report, but it's not really all about that. It's really more about management's description criteria around their cybersecurity risk management program and all the different components that are included as part of that. And you don't have to use the trust services criteria. If management has already gone through several risk assessments and they've aligned with either NIST or ISO, they can use one of those frameworks as their control baseline. They just have to demonstrate that they have done so against a generally accepted framework. It does not have to be the AICPA TSCs. The report user, Mark mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the report user, the reader, is different as well. For a SOC 2, that's for a very specific audience. It's only really supposed to be for the customers that are utilizing that service from that service organization. SOC for Cyber is a very broad audience. It's a general report. So like Mark said, it can be for potential investors, potential customers. It can be for existing customers. It can go out really to anyone who's even thinking about investing in that company. So it's a general use report, not as restricted as a SOC 2 report might be. And then you get into some of the specifics of actually what's included in the report. As part of SSAE 18, there's some new requirements around, even for a SOC 1 or a SOC 2, how a subservice organization is treated. You can still carve out or include those subservice organizations in your report. And if you carve it out in SOC 2, there's some more requirements that management has around monitoring that subservice organization, but you're for all intents and purposes still carving them out. You're not necessarily saying, hey, we're addressing all of those risks as part of this report. For cybersecurity, that's no longer an option. A lot of the risk really relate to third parties these days, and that has to be included in part of your report. You know, how are you addressing third parties? How are you addressing your subservice organizations? If they have access to your data, they are now a risk. So you have to include that as part of your report.
That subservice organization is such a formal term, you know.
It is. It's just third
parties. Why not just talk
yeah.
about third parties?
Yeah.
Third parties that are providing services as a part of your control framework need to be included.
Yeah. And the last key difference is probably the controls matrix. So in a SOC 2 or SOC 1, you include the detailed results for all of the controls that are tested as part of the description criteria. So all the processes that are addressing all of the risk, all the specific controls, the test of the control, and the results of that test are included in a SOC 2. SOC for Cybersecurity will not include that section. It will still be performed. The CPA firm is still going to perform that work, but as you can imagine, that work is going to be very sensitive since it is around the cybersecurity governance framework of that company. So those results will not be included in the report.
Excellent. So as we're starting to bring this home, now I think, Drew, you already kind of answered this question I'm about to ask, but I really want to bring as much clarity as possible as one of the last questions I want to ask you about. So you just did a great job. You did a great job really looking at the technical perspective from what you all see from your vantage point. So now what I want to do is kind of rotate the table around. And so now I want you to speak directly to maybe one of those leaders or one of those decision makers at an organization. And the question is, which type of report will an organization need? So speaking specifically to their needs, the high-level things they're thinking about, what they're uncertain about. Do they need a SOC 2? Do they need SOC for cybersecurity? How do you kind of approach the specific needs for that report user on the other side? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, the answer is always going to depend, right? But the good thing about SOC for cybersecurity is it is scalable, and every organization could benefit from a SOC for cybersecurity. It's not just entities that are being requested to provide a SOC 2, which is a lot of times the case when an organization is pursuing a SOC 2 report. They're doing it because they're either contractually obligated or somebody's asked them to do it if they want to do business with them. SOC for cybersecurity can really be a marketing tool to say, hey, we do have a good cybersecurity program in place, and it's a good flag to carry and allow them to flaunt it, right? We talked about risk assessments. A lot of organizations are already performing security risk assessments, but the reports are often internal. There's no formal opinion around that. There's no formal management assertion around that. There's no independent third-party opinion around that. It's just, here's the results against the framework that we've assessed you against. And so SOC for cybersecurity really allows you to market that. Now, if you have a SOC 2 already, there may be some things that you can leverage as part of that for some of the controls testing. But again, this is usually going to be an entity-wide thing. The SOC for cyber will be, whereas SOC 2 is very specific. So you won't necessarily have all the leverage, but you might need both.
And I think about it as, an entity with a SOC for cybersecurity is having the control processes that it operates within its own organization to protect its own environment evaluated, okay? And whereas with a SOC 2 report, typically you've got a service provider who has, it does have controls on its own environment, but it has a separate set of controls that are built around the service that it's offering, the third-party service, that it's selling as part. And so those controls may be more or less restrictive, and those are evaluated in the SOC 2, but it doesn't give the entity any perspective on its own security posture inside the organization. And so that's the distinction. So there's a chance you'd need both. If you are a service provider, you're probably still going to have a SOC 2 report that gives assurance about the security around the service that you're providing in accordance with, the principles in the SOC 2 and the trust services criteria. But you may also say, hey, that doesn't give us any assurance our company itself isn't going to get compromised. Maybe we feel good about the service we're offering, but we have data and information that's important that we want to protect, and we would like to take that step and make sure that we're not going to be at risk over and above the service that we're offering. So that's a key distinction. Hopefully that'll help some of the listeners in their mind understand the difference between the SOC 2 and the SOC for cybersecurity.
I know both of you and the rest of your team, you all are super accessible. You're always eager to meet the person where they're at and where their organization is at on thinking about what is it that you need to be doing next. How can you be looking at your blind spots and making the best decision? So I know we just talked about SOC 2 and SOC for cybersecurity, and there's all other types of options. What's just a good way to connect with you guys and to get in touch, to figure out what's the best way to get support?
Well, Clark, we've done several things. We think it's important to be thought leaders. And so one of the things that we've done, if listeners are interested in this topic and want some more details, our blog on LBMCinformationsecurity.com, we have a series that focuses on SOC for cybersecurity. It covers in more detail some of the topics that we've talked about today. So I would encourage them to go out and start there. And then based on that, we would welcome the opportunity to talk with them a little bit more. If they have questions they want to talk about, would this be appropriate for their organization, or would it be appropriate for some of their business partners for them to be asking for this in contracts? Have them they can reach out to us, and we would love to have that discussion and help them begin to plan for what it would look like to do one of these and lay the groundwork for a successful cybersecurity risk management program.
Excellent. So just the website, best way to kind of get in touch? Is that what you prefer?
That's a great way to start. They can certainly email any of us. Our email addresses will be posted below the podcast, and we would welcome emails or phone calls as well. So as a cybersecurity team, we are accessible through any electronic means.
Thank you so much to both of you for coming in to share your insights, share some both zoomed in perspectives on an organization's challenges, but also taking it way out far wide on how this applies to so much more than just the one organization. So thank you, both of you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.